Hello, friends, and welcome back to Cine Club. The new Hellboy reboot just came out, and while many of us were impressed by the first look of David Harbour as Hellboy, we have no choice but to ask this question now. Who is the best Hellboy, Ron Perlman or David Harbour? Yes, it's always hard to see one of your favorite characters replaced by a new actor and have their entire story retold. While many prefer Perlman for being the first Hellboy, not to mention under Guillermo del Toro's direction, it is still fair to compare the two performances and decide, once and for all, who did the role more justice. It is important not to compare the movies because, well, you know. But both actors' performances are worth comparing since they both were true to Hellboy in different ways. First, let's talk about the character design. In terms of aesthetic, both Harbour and Perlman looked badass as Hellboy. There were only a few small differences in the details. Overall, Perlman's design looked a lot cleaner and put together, which is very reminiscent of early 2000s superhero movies. On the other hand, Harbour's look was rougher and messier. In a way, it was a more realistic take on what we can imagine a demonic creature would look like if it was summoned from another dimension. Both makeup artists took into consideration the face shape of their actors. Therefore, each Hellboy still has facial similarities to the actor portraying it. However, with David Harbour, Hellboy's features looked harsher than Perlman's. His chin was longer and his cheekbones were more prominent. This looked great in photography, but when you see the film, the features look a little odd when Harbour moves around or talks. They also exaggerated his brow bone, which makes his eyes look sunken and even smaller. In terms of costumes, they both kept it similar to the comic books except for a few differences. While Perlman had a neat samurai hairstyle, Harbour rocked a messy man bun. Perlman had a long leather jacket and Harbour had a more current-looking trench coat. All in all, both looked pretty damn cool. So far, so good. Now, let's talk about Hellboy's personality. Here's where it gets tricky. Guillermo del Toro and Neil Marshall approach the character in very different ways. In the comics, Hellboy is known for being gruff, a bit blunt, and kinda rough around the edges. But he is funny, sarcastic, and protective of those he cares about. Perlman portrayed this with ease. From his first few minutes on screen, we could tell Hellboy was rebellious, resentful of being kept hidden, but still knew his duty and was loyal to those he cared for. According to the comics, Hellboy is supposed to be younger than he looks. His body matures faster than his mind. So while he may look all grown up and kinda scary, he is meant to be like a teenager or in his 20s. Perlman definitely played it a bit more mature, with only a few hints of Hellboy's young age with his jealousy and sporadic tantrums. Harbour, on the other hand, played it completely different. While Perlman might have played it a bit too grown up, Harbour went a little too childish. He is constantly throwing tantrums, angry at everyone, and whining about everything. Maybe teenage aspect is more loyal to the comics, but in the end, Harbour's Hellboy felt lacking in personality. He was just not as likable as Perlman's version. In 2014's Hellboy, the main character had a lot of personality. We knew he ate a ton of food, had a major thing for kittens, had some friends, even the human agents, cared a lot about his pops, and was madly in love with Liz. We understood his struggles and his isolation, even when he frequently delivered cheesy but funny one-liners. 2019's Hellboy, as much as they tried, was not funny. His lines weren't that good, and whenever he attempted a joke, it just fell flat. This isn't necessarily the actor's fault. There is only so much you can do with a so-so script, and that is putting it lightly. With Harbour, it was hard to find a quality that was likable. He was always upset at something, reacting to the craziness around him as opposed to bringing something to the table. They tried to give him a vulnerable side by adding Alice as a supporting character, a girl he once rescued from the fairies. But it didn't work out as well as the portrayal of Hellboy and Liz's dynamic in 2004. They also completely changed his dynamic with his adoptive father, Professor Trevor Brutenholm. In 2004's Hellboy, Professor Broom raised Hellboy to be a great man, to choose to be good and not to give in to his hellish nature. His influence over Hellboy is incredibly important, and it resonates throughout Hellboy's toughest decisions in the movie. In 2019's Hellboy, it was a typical strained relationship because Pops didn't want to play ball with me and wasn't a normal dad. Maybe it's because you weren't a normal kid, Hellboy? Maybe. Regardless, they reduced their relationship to some silly stereotype that somehow justified Hellboy's bratty behavior. It didn't add any complexity or vulnerability to the character. Finally, let's talk about the demon factor. Yes, Hellboy is a badass, atypical superhero of sorts. He is funny and sarcastic and doesn't take crap from anyone. These are just some of the traits that make him likable and fun to watch. But what grounds the comics and many superhero stories is how different they are and feel from humans. Hellboy is frequently rejected for what he looks like and what he represents. This is what causes him to develop a defense mechanism to deal with a world that doesn't want him. This is also what makes his relationship with Liz so important. While the love story is not part of the original comics, his love for her shows there is humanity in him, and he wants to preserve that. Hellboy wants so much to fit in and be accepted. His constant struggle between what he was born as and what he wishes he can be is what makes Hellboy such a compelling character. Del Toro's Hellboy portrayed this in several occasions. When he tells Liz he wishes he could change all of this, meaning himself, what he looks like, is a powerful, vulnerable moment for the character. In the end, Hellboy teaches its audience it's not what you are born as what defines you, but the choices you make. Neil Marshall's version carries the same message, but it was definitely more muddled. Harbour's Hellboy has moments where he is clearly in conflict with who he is and what his destiny should be. He doesn't understand why there can't be a world where monsters can roam freely. He struggles to understand why his father saved him but continues to kill all these other creatures Hellboy feels are just like him. Marshall's movie definitely shows a bit more of Hellboy's possible destiny and what that means in this universe. It allows for Harbour to explore a darker side to Hellboy and intensify his struggle between his humanity and his demonic nature. They also add more details to Hellboy's origins and parents. And while it wasn't done very eloquently, it was accurate to the comic books. So, with all that information, what do you think? Who is the best Hellboy? Do you prefer Ron Perlman's version or David Harbour's? Let me know in the comment section down below. Personally, I enjoyed Perlman a lot, even though I felt there was room for improvement. And while Harbour's wasn't perfect, it added something to the character we hadn't seen before. That's it for this video. Do not forget to let me know who your favorite Hellboy is in the comments section, or you can also let me know if you find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram if you look for Cineclub channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel, and I will see you in the next one.
How big can it be?